This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so now we're going to get started on our agenda. So welcome everybody. We always start with questions or concerns just to try to get any pressing issues that may be on your minds or as a part of the any projects that you're working on for the committee, things like that, or if you've been contacted by member libraries asking report related questions, or if just something came up in your library that you're curious about or you think we need to address. I try to give that some time up front. So does anybody have anything for pressing questions and concerns? Okay, well, hearing none, we'll go on to unfinished business. First thing under unfinished business is our training materials project. Videos, no new videos were produced this month. I've been doing those kind of on an as needed basis as questions have been asked and people, requested additional information about reports or templates, what have you. So I didn't get anything in the last couple of months that felt like it required a training video. So I just haven't made any. I think that's something that's probably, we need to get back on at some point, but we've talked about it numerous times in this committee, and we've more or less decided that the training needs that arise are going to be the ones that we will try to address rather than trying to make up work or think of new ways that we can keep ourselves busy. We decided to kind of just try to address the actual needs that are there. So without those, no new videos were created this month or the last. Now report guides, those are print guides that we have been working on as a committee. Let me drag this window over here and let me drag this tab over here so that you guys can see the shared drive that we have in Google Drive. So this is our committee drive. Beth and Tony, you guys should have access to this. Any of our projects that we work on as a committee, the work will be tracked and shared in this drive so that people can review each other's work, make notes, things like that, ask questions, and we can all kind of look at the same document and things like that. So in this drive, you can see there is a folder for training materials right here. And there is also a folder within that for report guides. And then it's broken up here by the report types that are in the shared folders in the Evergreen Reporter. So it's just broken up in the same manner. So you've got things like circulation counts and then lists and things like that. So the structure just mirrors kind of what is in the reporter. So that being said, how can libraries access these videos? That's a good question, Beth. So the plan is, let me go back and find the, that may be in the shared folder. And this is something that Steve, you and I are going to have to get together, and I'm going to have to give you copies or something of this shared folder, because there's some things that live in this shared folder that have not made it over. Whatever I can get over into the shared folder or shared drive, I will move over. But
okay.
It's entirely possible that there are some things in there that I can't move over. Like for instance, this was made by Kate, this was made by Rebecca. I don't own those, and so it won't let me move a lot of that stuff. So then whenever my organization, this is on my Trails drive or Trails account. So whenever they suspend my account because I'm leaving Trails, then I've honestly never done this, but I'm going to assume that these folders will not be accessible at that point, because I'm the owner of these folders.
Yeah.
That hasn't been a problem up until now, but that's why we have the shared drive, so that nobody actually owns it. It's on a consortial drive. Did you have something you wanted to share about that, Steve?
No, I was going in to see myself, but I mean, before we can probably figure it out before they kill off
Turn
your,
things off.
yeah.
So, so Beth, to get back to what we were talking about, so this is very similarly structured, but it's a shared folder. We were using this prior to the shared drive existing. The shared drive has only been around for maybe the last 6 months, probably less. And so before that, many of the committee members had Google Drive access, and so we shared, or I shared some folders with all of the committee members, and we kept all of our work in these folders. But as I've already discussed, it's tied to my account, so it kind of presents some problems for the committee. But in here, to get back to the original question, is a work guide for this these report guides. So basically, this is just tracking who has what work ahead of them, and how many things have been completed. And some of this has not been updated, but once these are done, then we send finished copies of these guides. And I know I'm kind of bouncing around here. Let me go back out and I can show you what one of these guides actually looks like. So this is, for instance, a report guide for a template that is named number of circulated items based on circulating library and patron library. So this guide is specifically about that one template. And the plan is eventually to have one of these guides for every single template. Once these are finished, we save them as a PDF and we send them over to either Ron Eifert or Dan Brower. Ron is from Sikeston Public Library and Dan Brower is from Cass County Public Library. And they both have access to edit the Missouri Evergreen website. And then under member resources, you can scroll down to reports training materials and click on that. And you can see these report guides just live here. So we've got a general guide for standardized report columns. And then we've got the template specific guides themselves live under these headings for circulation counts. You've got all of those, you've got circulation lists, and then you've got those. And each one of these essentially is just a link to the PDF. So if anybody is struggling with a specific template and they're not sure how to use it or how to interpret the output that they're getting, these guides are supposed to help with that. So Beth, that's something that as we go back through this, we may need to look at what's been assigned to different people. So looks like Josh has finished all of, well, no, not all of his. So there's a few money templates that still need to be worked on. There's Lori's got some more that she needs to work on. She's still on the committee and she is still working on templates. So we may want to update with her, make sure that you guys aren't duplicating your efforts. But anyway, basically what we would do is we would take some of the templates that are assigned to somebody else and give them to you so that that work is spread out among more people and it's not concentrated to any one individual. To completely give away the progress that I've made, I finished up circulation counts. So all of the circulation count templates are now have a guide, and I feel like I do this every time we have a committee meeting. Hey, I am signed in. All right, never mind. I feel like every time we have a committee meeting, I should have a tab open to Evergreen already, and I don't have it signed in, but this time I did. But something else that we have talked about doing, Beth, and Tony, I don't know if you've seen this either is one of these. Nope, it's not in there. I had an example somewhere and I must have gotten rid of the template. Anyway, let me blow this up a little bit so you guys can maybe see this a little bit easier. Right here in this column where it says docs, eventually the idea is that these links to these guides, they can be linked right there. There can be a link, just like this is a link to Trails admin. There could be a link right here so that in the reporter, there's documentation and they can be directly taken to it. They don't have to remember, I have to go to moevergreenlibraries.org and I have to go through the navigation and all of that. There would be a link right here. And we've tested that. We know that it works. Let's see. I was going to demonstrate. I don't know. I haven't done this in a little while. I haven't tested it, but I believe there it is right there. Documentation URL. So all you would really have to do, let's say that this was the right guide for that template. You grab that URL, copy it, paste it right there, save it, and then you would have a link for that template. So then if I was coming back through here, and where was it? Where did I save it? There it is. Okay. So now you can see that link. It says external documentation. You can click on it and it goes right to that guide. So it works pretty slick. We're not to that point yet where we have all of those things linked. But once we get all of the guides ready to go, that's kind of the idea, is that if somebody's trying to use this template, having trouble, click that link, and they'll have a guide directly to it. Now, along with that, we also have, a parallel project with that where we're working on a development project with Equinox for a simple reporter tool that may make some of these guides not as necessary as they once were, but we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to that point in the agenda. I primarily just wanted to mention that some progress had been made, that I put a bunch on here. I also sent some circulation list templates that Kate had completed. These collection count templates are also from Kate. I didn't see any others, but Steve, did you happen to get any done? And I apologize if I didn't see them in the folders, but.
No, I did not.
Okay.
We're picking a good time for me to transition because we just got done with our Pleasant Hill move around and our Archie move and all that stuff. And I just installed around 100 computers in all of our branches. So we got all the big projects out of the way. So now I'm in good shape.
Is that all? Just 100, huh?
Yeah, just 100. And the monitors didn't come at the same time. So I had to do those separately. So that was fun as well. So
yeah, never, nothing ever seems to completely come together all at once. You always have to go back and fix something a little bit. Okay, well, at least I didn't miss anything. So I think that's all of the updated ones. I did get an email from Lori. She said that she had completed some and put those in the folder that she was assigned. So that will be something that we'll need to go back through and make sure, if they're ready to go, that we get those saved as PDFs and we send them off to Ron and Dan so they can be added to the website. So like I said, then those will all be listed here, and we can start the project of getting those links put into the reporter itself. Anybody else have anything else to mention about the report guides? Or Beth, Tony, do you guys have any questions about the report guide project? I'm trying to watch chat as much as I can. Okay, if something pops up, I'll stop and come back, but I don't see anything right now. Okay, The next thing on the agenda is the reports module feedback survey. So we talked as a committee a little while ago about, we had gotten some indication from the survey that the strategic planning committee put together that had some information in it about reporting and the reporter tool. And some of the feedback, well, a considerable amount of the feedback indicated that people were still unhappy with the reporting tool, but it didn't go into detail about what specifically they were unhappy with, or if they had ideas about what could potentially fix it. So what we did was we created a reports module feedback survey, and I did that with a Google form. So this is still in the shared drive, so you guys should all have access to this. I have turned off responses. So when you open this, if you haven't used a form before, the initial view is just all of the questions. And if you're an editor, then you can actually go in and make changes to the questions and things like that. And then the other tab up here at the top is for responses. So you can see once I flipped over to that tab, I've turned it off. We're not accepting responses anymore. We gave them until June 11th to give us some feedback. And I did tell folks that if they had multiple people at their library that ran reports, that we would accept multiple entries or multiple submissions from a single library. So in responses, you can get a lot of statistical information about each question. So you can see libraries that responded, you can see everybody's roles. So I thought it was interesting, about 2/3 of the people who responded were either a director or an assistant director. And I would say that probably speaks to the size of libraries that we have in a lot of our member institutions. Many of them are on the smaller side, and so the folks that are active in the consortium are likely to be either a director or an assistant director. And then of course the rest of the questions, you can see some of the responses. I didn't think until after we had already sent it out that we did allow people to kind of sit right in the middle. We didn't do, I kind of like a four number scale, just so that you have to at least pick, if you pick 2, then on a 4-point scale, if you pick 2, then you're more dissatisfied than you are satisfied, right? And so you kind of have to pick one or the other. And I think librarians are kind of notoriously fence sitters. So nobody wants to bother anybody else or be perceived as causing a fuss. So I think a lot of times folks respond to surveys with, yeah, I'm just going to put 3s because it may not be the best, but it's also not the worst. And so I'm just going to respond to 3s. And sometimes those responses are not as useful as seeing who's really pleased or upset about something. But anyway, you can definitely see some trends in these responses, but I also do like the fact that, or I'm glad that we allowed for some qualitative responses as well, because people could actually type their responses to some of these questions. And I think the work of the reports committee going forward could really benefit from some of the input that they have given. So, like for instance, with this question, what would you say is the biggest challenge with using the reports module? Many people just said, the module is difficult to use, but in some cases you get a little bit more detail. Like for instance, building new reports from scratch is difficult. The tree structure on the back end is confusing. A lot of it had to do with creating reports, and I think some of our training materials are geared toward resolving that issue, but it certainly seems like there are some folks who either have not seen those or have not necessarily seen the benefit of those, and maybe they haven't resolved the issues that we think that they have. So, and there's another response: confusing names. So for those folks that have been on the committee for a while, we just renamed a lot of our templates not that long ago. So that's a little frustrating that some of those names are still confusing for people, but it just means that, we've got some work to do. One other thing that I think is nice is that if you go to individual tab up here, you can see the individual responses as well, not just statistical responses. So for instance, if there was a qualitative response that you wanted to follow up on with someone, you could go to the individual responses and look through the qualitative responses that they gave and see, is this the person that I need to talk to? Another way to do that slightly faster is most of the time Google Forms can pretty easily transmit all of their responses into a spreadsheet, and that exists already. You can either click here to look at it, or if you're getting into the folder on the shared drive, there's a sheet right here, and it's named the same thing, but in parentheses it says responses. So when you open that, you can see, individual responses. You can see the questions are up at the top, and then each row is a different submission. So, this one came from Caruthersville, Montgomery City, etc. And you can see their individual responses, which is, not necessarily something that I would, not something that I would necessarily make public, but certainly for the purposes of the committee, it's nice to know, okay, somebody was really critical of X, Y, or Z. They clearly need to be followed up with about that to see is there something that we can do to help. So sometimes it takes one-on-one assistance. Sometimes pointing them to one of our training videos might be enough. But anyway, so I wanted to share that with you. I think, I don't necessarily want to draw, sweeping conclusions one way or the other. But we do have data to look at now, and the committee can review that. I think now, between now and the next time you have a business meeting, that's probably a good idea for everybody to take a look at this and see if you can draw some individual conclusions, and then kind of bring those to discuss at the next meeting. I suppose I've kind of mentioned this in a couple of different places, and I only realized earlier today that I didn't have a specific agenda item on here for to discuss the changes in the committee. I suppose that makes sense that it's in new business. Since I have editing privileges, I'll just put that right there. There, it was always there. Okay, so that's the report survey data. We've got it. It's ready to be reviewed. I don't think that we're in a position right now as of this committee meeting to make any decisions based on the information that's there, but it's good that we got some responses. So going into new business, I do want to mention that this is my last meeting to serve as chair. Steve Erickson from Cass County is going to be taking over as chair in July. So the next time you all have any meeting, whether it's a working meeting or a business meeting, it will be with him as the chair. In addition, well, first, welcome, Steve, and thank you very much for taking on this responsibility.
Hey, thank you, and thank you for doing it for so long, Kyle. You've done a great job, and so.
Yeah, thank you. It's one of those things that yeah, it's a committee that has a lot of work ahead of it, but and is really important, but is also, or it can be fairly time consuming. So it's sometimes tough to get people to commit to serving, but it's super important what we do on here. So anyway, yeah, thank you very much, Steve, for serving. And then in addition to that, I do want to mention that my plan initially, whenever I discussed my transitioning out of the chair role, was to stay on the committee for a while, at least to help with the transition and maybe even longer. But some things have changed for me at Trails, and tomorrow is actually my last day. So I actually will not be at Trails. I won't be, so obviously, therefore, I won't be on this committee. I won't be at a Missouri Evergreen library anymore, so I won't be, active in that community, which honestly has been one of the harder things for me to leave. I mean, obviously, I've been at Trails for about 13 years, so that brings with it, quite a bit of history and relationships with colleagues and things like that. But one of the most positive and gratifying things has been the work that I've done with other libraries in the consortium. And so that's something that I'll definitely miss, going to a different organization. I'm going to be working in an academic library at the University of Central Missouri, which is also right here in Warrensburg. So that's great for me that, my family's not having to move. But it is going to be a pretty different world. I'm going to be living in the same house, but almost everything else about my days will be pretty different. So anyway, just wanted to get that out there, so that as Steve and I are talking a little bit about, transition and what he's going to have to do, what I need to do to make sure that he's got what he needs, that's kind of what we're referring to. Steve, do you want to add anything else about that?
I mean, I appreciate the opportunity, and I look forward to working with everybody in the reports committee. I've worked with Kyle and Kate in particular for quite a while on the committee, and I just look forward to the things that we'll do as a committee to make positive changes. I was kind of glancing over the survey responses here, and it's just very interesting. I think we can do some good things. I don't know if we'll achieve what Kyle's had to achieve from basically nothing, but hopefully we can make some good positive changes and make it a little bit easier for all of the consortium members to access it. The reports module. I mean, I think one thing that's intimidating about the reports module, and we've talked about this before, is that a lot of people, it intimidates them. So once they get the reports they need, they don't want to edit anything or change anything. They just keep doing it the same every month without ever changing it or even looking at it to see what we've added or different things. Whereas if people, if we can get people to take a look when we finish our guides and everything like that, they might be pleasantly surprised to come back and try out some things that maybe they're not getting on their reports or tweak their reports that they're just coping with the way they work currently. So.
Yep. And as I mentioned before, all those number 3 responses, those people that are not feeling strongly one way or the other, or at least they don't want to say they feel strongly one way or the other. That's I think also indicative of something else that this committee has had to deal with in the past. I was going to show, we have in the reporter, we have the templates that we kind of manage in this ME reports account, which, don't let me forget, Steve, I need to get you credentials for that before I leave. Have I already given those to you?
I believe I have those.
Okay, good deal. But anyway, we manage, all of the templates in these folders that I think are really beneficial. I know that we found them really beneficial whenever Trails first joined 4 years ago. But in addition to that, we also have, we have Equinox folders, we have Mobius folders, we have, other staff that are sharing things. There's a lot of other resources out there where you can find answers to report related questions. And that's one reason why in the survey we asked this question, when you have a question about reports, where do you usually look for an answer? Because something that we have found in, whoops, that's the wrong tab. Whenever we're talking to people about templates, there are a lot of templates that people use that are not in these shared folders that, when you really get to talking to somebody and they're asking you to help with a template that they're using, a lot of times it's a template that, once you actually ask a few questions and say, can you send me maybe a screen capture of your template that you're using and how you filled it out and everything, it may be one that you've never seen. It may be one that they had Equinox build for them, and that could have been 2-3 years ago, and they don't even realize that, oh, this isn't even a shared one. This is one that we had, either Equinox or Mobius or somebody build for us. And so there's just a lot of information coming from different directions and things like that. And they don't, in some cases, they don't want to seem as a bother. They don't want to, interrupt anybody's day to create a template for them. So that's something that this committee, I think, has had to struggle against a little bit, is people not really asking us, but going directly to the support vendor. And I'm sure the other committees probably, CERC and cataloging, they probably have similar issues as well. I just see it more here because I'm on this committee. But anyway, that's something that we, periodically I will go in here and look at some of these the templates that Equinox has made for our folks, just because usually that's the only way that I'm gonna see them and know kind of what people have going on. Unfortunately, a lot of them don't indicate, like who they were made for or why. The title and the description are pretty useful, but it doesn't tell you everything, right? So anyway, it's and then they've started to duplicate some of our structure. And I guess that's not really fair. That's not uncommon in Missouri Evergreen Consortia. I've seen this kind of structure in other Evergreen library systems like Pines and Pales and some of the other libraries around the country. But anyway, so it can be a little bit confusing whenever you tell somebody, hey, go into library collections, and they're used to being down here, and they've grabbed list items added by date range, and we may have a template that's very similar, but is built a little bit differently. That can be something that's a little tough. So anyway, that's kind of some of the challenges that we have with this committee. But usually those can be resolved with just with communication and experience and practice. I will tell both Tony and Beth, and I'm sure Steve would probably echo this, that when I started on this committee, I knew hardly anything that I know now. I mean, it's the amount that I've learned as a part of this committee and just doing this work and interacting with vendors, support vendors, both Mobius and Equinox, has been enormous. So don't feel like if some of this stuff is not making a lot of sense, or you're at all feeling overwhelmed or out of your depth. It's either your first or your second meeting. That's normal. That's you're gonna get the hang of it before long. So
absolutely, it's very overwhelming when you first start messing around with the reports themselves. I'm still not super comfortable creating reports from scratch, but I try my best, and usually I can at least get to a point where if I can't get it to work, I know enough where I can call Equinox and I can get them to help me figure out why my report's not giving me the information I want.
Yep.
And so it's just kind of digging in and.
Yeah, I'm not ashamed to show you that this series of clones that I made here, you see this sort of thing pretty commonly. I was trying to create a DVD report for a staff member here, and then I had to clone it because something was wrong with it, and then I had to clone it again. So because they can't have the same name, Evergreen by default just adds clone, to the end of the name, and so you end up with clone, and then so on and so forth. And yeah, I've been doing this for a long time, and I feel fairly comfortable with the tool, but it's still, there's still things that stump you from time to time. And so anyway, it's normal, and the main thing is not get too discouraged and keep at it. And then if you do get to a point where you feel like you've kind of hit a dead end, to start asking questions from other people, because there's definitely some very knowledgeable people in the consortium and at Equinox that can definitely lend you their expertise and really give you a big step up. So.
Yeah, don't ever hesitate to email me directly either. If you guys have any questions or anything, you can email me anytime. Call if you don't like emailing, or if it's too complicated of a question to email. Sometimes we get into that with reports.
Yep.
So.
Yep, absolutely. I know there have been multiple times where you put in a ticket to Equinox or Mobius or whatever, and either Blake at Mobius would call me, or I have ended up having to call Equinox a couple of times, because for that very reason, because I can explain it to you, over the phone much easier than I can, try to describe it all in an email. It gets really complicated. So anyway, and luckily everybody is getting, well, for better or worse, people are getting way better at these kinds of video calls. So sharing screens and showing people what you're doing, definitely helps out, and makes things a little bit clearer. Okay, so that's kind of what's going on with the committee. I did want to give a quick update for the Simple Reporter tool. So basically what that is a project idea that Equinox's development team had pitched to myself and Shannon, the president of the executive board for Missouri Evergreen. We sat in on a demo where they pitched us an idea of basically pretty radically changing the interface for the reporter. It wouldn't, I think I just said replace. It would not actually replace the reporter. It would be an additional interface that would be very simplified. And because some of that work is proprietary, I can't show you guys any examples of the kinds of things that they were demonstrating, but it looked pretty impressive. It looked like a pretty user-friendly and intuitive interface. And so we were very interested. It has since been pitched to the executive board at Missouri Evergreen. They were very interested. Along with the Simple Reporter project, they also pitched a director's dashboard where you can get a lot of statistics at a glance, where it would have graphs and charts and things like that, where you can see new cards issued this month, or number of items served this month, or that kind of thing, kind of running totals, so that if you just wanted to see kind of how things compared without having to run a report, there would be a dashboard. So those were two separate projects, and they were each going to run us somewhere in the neighborhood of $40,000 to $50,000 to have that development done. So obviously that's something that we were not going to be able to do ourselves or by ourselves. And so they started looking for outside partners. They were able to find, I think, only one other partner in their search. There's been some more discussion among the executive board. I think some of the members of the executive board are interested in reaching out to other consortia directly, like not going through Equinox, and kind of speaking director to director or librarian to librarian and say, hey, this is a really important thing, and we think that it would be really important for your organization as well. So, please reconsider, providing a little bit of support. The executive board decided, of Missouri Evergreen, decided to dedicate about $10,000 a year in our annual budget for development projects. And so if it doesn't go to this, it will go to something else, and something that will be beneficial to the entire consortium. But the reporter by far is the single module in Evergreen that the most people have issues with. And so that was kind of the thing that we wanted to focus on first. So as far as I know, the plan going forward was to break those two projects completely apart and focus on the Simple Reporter tool project first. So that's why that's the only thing that I wanted to mention to you today, because the dashboard is going to be something that comes later. So we are still committed. The Missouri Evergreen Consortium is still committed for $10,000 for the next fiscal year toward this project. Another consortium, I think it was in Pennsylvania, I'm not sure. I think they lent $20,000 to the project. So we're getting somewhere close. We just would need, one or two other partners to pitch in. And then the great and also kind of frustrating thing about open source is, we're kind of struggling to get these other partners involved, and the source code, the benefit of this project is going to go right back into Evergreen, and everybody's going to benefit from it. So I think that's another reason why some of the directors that are serving on the executive board right now want to directly call some of these other consortia and ask them to reconsider, because it really is going to be a big benefit to everybody, and it doesn't make sense that only 2 or 3, maybe 5 libraries or consortia around the country pay for a module like this that's going to be such a big step forward for everyone. So anyway, hopefully that will come to fruition. If that happens, I could see that perhaps having a pretty big impact on the work of this committee, because it would become dramatically easier for people to do, especially routine statistical reporting. There are still some, and that's why these two things are going to exist in tandem, is that the Simple Reporter is going to be able to take care of a lot of your, just monthly board report sort of templates, but then for really in-depth or really specific niche kind of needs, you may still need to use a more robust tool to create a very specific template to satisfy your needs. So anyway, that's as much as I know right now. My understanding again was that folks from the executive board were pursuing contact information for other consortia to try to convince them to come on. So hopefully they can do that, and we can get started before too long. I know that they were projecting, Equinox was projecting that this project would take about a quarter, so about 3 months, and that's usually the amount of time that they set up in their contracts with people to develop fixes and new modules. So that's kind of the time frame that we're looking at. But if we're going to get it in this fiscal year, we kind of need to get on their books relatively soon, because if they're not working on this, they're going to move on to something else, because they have a team for development. So they're going to work toward developing something. Okay. Anybody have any other questions about that project or anything to add?
I think Cass counties might donate money to it as well as an individual library. So Christy, our director here, was very, 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 very interested in that tool. So that's
awesome. Yeah, that would be great. And I think, that was something that in one of the conversations that I was in, I think it was with I know it was with the executive board, that came up that, hey, what if an individual library would like to put more money toward it? I don't think that's something that we would, that as a consortium, we would necessarily turn it down. I think there's still that feeling, though, that more libraries that are going to benefit from this really should be pitching in. And so I think that's going to be the ideal maybe that we strive for. And if we can't do that, then it'll be great that we have the kind of support that you're talking about. But, I mean, hey, I think it'd be great. So hopefully everybody can come together to figure out a way to make that work. Okay, last item on the agenda is onboarding and training. So we have a current migration going on with St. James. I think their library is actually called James Memorial. Yeah, here we go, James Memorial Public Library. So they're coming on July 29th. I have only heard a few, minor things about that migration. Nobody has been in touch about doing any training from the reports committee rather. My understanding is, am I wrong, Steve? Was Kate going to contact them?
I believe so.
I thought Kate was going to get in touch with them to see if, because I think Scenic is managing that migration, aren't they?
I think so. I'm not 100% sure on the migration, but
okay.
I know that the reports committee, or not the report, the cataloging committee is looked over all of their records to make sure that they would transfer okay.
Right. Yeah, and Nate is the chair of that committee, so he and I have talked about that. I think they've made a lot of good progress there. I think that, and I say they're managing the migration. Obviously, Equinox is managing the migration, but we have started assigning library teams to these migrations so that we can have the consortial perspective in a lot of these conversations. Because, for example, when Mobius set up a lot of our libraries when they were initially migrated, I'm guessing Cass County was probably the same way, Steve, and Poplar Bluff and Mountain View may very well have been the same too. They gave us generic usernames. It wasn't Constant Kyle or Constant K or anything like that. It was, Trails Circ 1 or Warrensburg Circ 1 or what have you. And then those usernames were shared. Well, in a migration call that I was a part of just yesterday, Equinox was talking to Henry County, which is another migration that we have coming up, about setting up usernames that were specific to individual people. And so Nate and I are on that team, and we talked a little bit after that call about the fact that we kind of need to come together as a consortium and see, is that something that we want to do or not? Because if Equinox's practice is to have personal usernames for credentials, and Mobius's practice was to have very generic ones, having those both in the catalog or in the ILS can look a little odd. That doesn't necessarily mean that they can't coexist, but it would probably be nice to have it be standardized. And I know at Trails, we have talked quite a bit about some of the things that we would benefit by having personal logins, being able to track, errant activity at either branches or in technical services or wherever, so that you could try to pinpoint, do we have a training need? Do we have, some activity that's being focused by one staff member that's maybe making the mistake over and over again. So anyway, that's just an example of why we are putting some of these teams on these migrations. So St. James is coming pretty quickly. Next month they'll be migrating, and like Steve said, part of that process is the cataloging committee looking over their records and making sure that everything is fine. And then they will be trained by Equinox. They will also have some training from the consortium. That will be part of that migration team. They will be doing that training. And then we'll have members of the consortium on site on Go Live Day, because Equinox also does not do that. That's something that a lot of us were used to from Mobius, and that I just feel like that's a necessity. You have to have people there that have a better idea how Evergreen works whenever you are first starting out.
Yeah. Yeah, the new libraries was definitely smoother with Mobius.
Yes, very much so. And we also have found out in going through this process of having the onboarding committee and starting to lay out these new practices and the framework for, okay, that didn't work well. What are we going to do to make sure that the next migration runs better? One of the things that we've learned is that on a couple of recent migration go live dates, they couldn't even get in touch with Equinox, which is a huge problem. They apparently had, a phone number that they could call. Nobody was answering. They sent emails. They didn't get a call or an email back until almost noon that day. To me, on a go live day, you need to have somebody. You need to have somebody there to respond to those kinds of things. So hopefully, that's something that we're going to be addressing again by having consortial staff there. I suppose in Equinox's defense, it was not part of their contract to do that, but I still feel like that should be a part of a migration. So anyway,
I agree.
yeah. I think if nothing else, it just points out something that we want to focus on being in the contract in the future. If they're even willing to do it, maybe it wasn't in the contract because they said, hey, we just don't do this. I really don't know.
I don't think they have a huge staff, and they do manage a lot of libraries. So I don't know if they have. I mean, they have people that do the virtual training. And it's good for what it is, but nothing beats in-person training, because a lot of these libraries that are joining the consortium, Evergreen is severely different than what they used before, or we've even had libraries that join Evergreen and this is the first time they've ever had any kind of ILS
Right.
online. So
yeah. And again, in Mobius's defense, or excuse me, in Equinox's defense, Mobius had the advantage of being right here in the state, and basically every member was, drivable distance. So if they needed to be on site for go live, it was not, it wasn't that expensive. I mean, certainly it took time, but it wasn't the same kind of travel expense that it would be for Equinox. And even saying that, I mean, many of their members, or many of their employees, they're a very decentralized company. They kind of are all over the place. Most of them work from home, and so, or at least that's what I gather.
I think you're right.
So that could be, the travel costs there could be pretty high, and it could end up being one of those situations where, okay, yeah, we can do it, we can add it to the contract, but here's what it's going to cost. So anyway, okay, so moving on to the Henry County migration, that's going to happen in August. Like I said, Nate and I are on that migration team. That is going really well. We just sat in on a call again just yesterday, going over some new settings and spreadsheets for just different configurations, ways that they want to set up notices and due dates and things like that. They have a little bit more time to get things ready, but it's going really well, and they have had a few questions, and I'm glad that Nate and I have been there. But we're looking at they're going to be trained by Equinox in early July, and then they'll be trained by Missouri Evergreen staff in late July, and then we'll have Missouri Evergreen staff on site for go live date in Clinton. They also do have a big benefit in that their new director, and I forget her name, Stephanie somebody. Stephanie Rogers, there we go. I forget where she comes from, maybe Lebanon Laclede. Anyway, she comes from another Missouri Evergreen library. So that's going to be a big benefit for their go live, that she's already pretty familiar with Evergreen, even if, you know, maybe she didn't do cataloging or whatever, but she'll know enough to be able to get them off the ground and going pretty smoothly on that go live day. So hopefully that migration is going to go really well for all of those reasons. But we, like I said, we plan to provide training and be around to help support them. Okay, so that's the migration update. Any other questions or concerns about migration tasks? Okay. Well, the next meeting, if we followed our normal pattern, we usually meet on the second Thursday in the afternoon at 2 o'clock. If the committee decides to change that in the future, by all means, I think it does occasionally fall on our membership meeting days as well. So it ends up being, for a lot of people, it ends up being a full day of Evergreen meetings, and that doesn't always work out very well. But anyway, if that schedule changes, by all means, that's something you guys can work out. But yeah, I do want to again thank everybody for being here. Thank you, Beth and Tony, for coming on as new members. This committee always needs new perspectives and always needs people to come in, fresh blood to come in, because I know I've been here forever, and I know I can definitely get tunnel vision sometimes. And well, this is the project that we're working on, and we just need to keep going until it's done and all of that. And every once in a while, it is nice to have somebody go, "Why are we doing this again?" So anyway, fresh blood is really important. Hopefully, you guys can get acquainted with the projects that we have going on and get active and learn a lot about reports and really really benefit the consortium. Beth, you say in the comments or the chat that you're not sure what you guys can offer, but you'll try to keep up. Again, everybody feels like that on the first time. I can tell you, it's going to be one of those things. It's going to be a learning process, and this is something else that we've talked about as Missouri Evergreen members. Not only that we need to improve the training materials that we have and improve migration training, but also to have refresher training for existing members that feel like they're not quite as adept at something as they want to be or need to be. And so it would be an opportunity for us to have maybe regional workshops, or I know at MLA there's going to be a half-day pre-conference for Missouri Evergreen library members that can get together and work on some Missouri Evergreen related projects. So Beth and Belle, please don't feel like you don't have anything to offer, because we're all works in progress. We all get better, and we all have those times that we stumble. So it just happens. That's not a problem. Don't get discouraged. But anyway, and I also again want to thank Steve for taking this on, because I do think that what the reports committee does is important, and so I didn't intend to leave it so abruptly, but things just kind of worked out that way. Sometimes I am glad that we had a transition and a plan in place, but I wasn't planning on being completely gone so fast. But Steve, I'm not dead. You know how to get in touch with me. So
Yep.
if you do have questions, by all means, let me know. If there's anything I can do to help you, I will do it, buddy.
I appreciate it, Kyle. I appreciate it.
So,
I know where you work too. I frequented
yeah,
that library before, so.
that's right. That's right. That building's a little hard to miss. So yeah, you'll know right where to find me. So anyway, Well, all right, everybody. Thank you guys so much for being here. I really appreciate everybody, and I'm looking forward to getting updates occasionally on the great things that you guys are doing for the consortium. So, thanks, everybody.
Hey,
Bye.
thank you, Kyle.
Yep, no
You've
problem.
been
Have a
great.
good one.
Hey, you
Yep,
too. I'll be in touch with you pretty soon here. So,
sounds good.
all right.
Thanks, Steve.
Uh-huh.